Many thanks for your company. Welcome back to the marketplace. Now, the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications is lamenting the increasing rate of fibre cuts as well as cable, fuel and battery thefts and some incidents of vandalism to infrastructure of its members in the country. CEO of the Ghana Chambers of Telecommunications, Kenneth Ashigbe, says the development has increased operational costs of its members and all efforts must be made to curtail the situation. Kenneth Ashigbe has been meeting industry players in Cape Coast to find a lasting solution to the challenge. Richard JoyNews has more.
Brought together stakeholders from the road agencies, road contractors, utility service providers, local governments, regulators and others who work within the reservations or play critical roles in its management. Operator data gathered by the Ghana Telecoms Chamber reveals there has been over 2,000 fibre cuts within the last 6 months of the year 2019. These cuts, which were caused mainly by private developers, road contractors, unknown criminals and other utility providers, cost the industry over 30 million Ghana cedis in direct repairs only. The Central Region alone recorded about 200 cuts out of these totals. CEO of the Ghana Telecoms Chamber, Ken Ashigbe, says the happenings are worrying.
We are recording about 300 cuts a month now. And I'm sure if you ask urban roads to start telling you about how much they are spending in terms of relocation cost, highways and all of that, it runs into billions. There's also the challenging incidents of vandalization of telecommunication infrastructure, from the stealing of fuel to the stealing of generators to batteries. Now the current one we have been seeing is that towers, the whole towers are even being stolen. And all of that tend to affect the service that is provided to all of us.
The industry also recorded over 150,000 litres of diesel and 240 batteries stolen from the cell sites, with a whopping 18 million affected subscribers and businesses within the value chain. Central Regional Minister Kwame Nadankan proposed a solution to minimizing the occurrences.
And as you way, I know this is not too much for you to do. I know what you can do. That a certain push to ensure that even the procurement process, before finally the contractor possesses the site, that it might be made a compulsory portion, the procurement process, where all of you stakeholders must meet and look at the site, whether you have the cables there and all of that, so that attention is drawn to it. It is something that we need to push, because in the end, we bear the cost ourselves.
The meeting focused on rallying participants towards building an action plan that promotes effective collaboration and better coordination within the right-of-ways while preserving each other's infrastructure. Richard JoyNews, JoyNews, Cape Coast.
Let's move to the Ashanti region now. The Public Interest Accountability Committee, PIAC, says poor supervision is a major cause of misuse of oil revenue for designated projects. Officials say regional representatives and district assemblies have often been sidelined in the planning and execution of oil-funded projects in their areas. Chairman of the committee, Dr. Steve Mantiao, spoke with Prince Appiah in an exclusive interview on the sidelines of the dissemination of 2018 PIAC report in Kumasi.
The Public Financial Management Act requires the money allocated for projects is returned to the Finance Ministry by implementing state agencies. The 2018 PIAC report, however, shows that most agencies fail to submit expenditure returns, yet the ministry continues to allocate funds to them. Chairman of the committee, Dr. Steve Mantiao, tells Loud Business it's about time the laws are enforced.
Partly the lack of enforcement of our laws, because the Public Financial Management Act requires that when monies are allocated for projects and entities of state who implement these projects, by the close of the year, have to report back to the ministry with expenditure returns. By and large, companies do not actually submit the expenditure returns, and yet the ministry continues to allocate monies to these implementing agencies. For me, that creates this situation of impunity that you find on the part of implementing agencies where money spent are not properly accounted for.
The report also revealed though over 600 million Ghana cedis earmarked for projects was unused, the money remains unaccounted for. The development contravenes Ghana's petroleum and financial administration laws. Dr. Mantiao says poor supervision on the part of government is the major cause.
And its lack of proper supervisory arrangements. You find that mostly when the committee goes into the regions to inspect oil-funded projects, what comes across is that the regional administrations are often not in the picture as to even the allocation of oil revenues for those projects. The district assemblies are often also not in the know. And so you find that the projects are actually contracted from Accra and without full knowledge to the beneficiary entities. And this creates opportunities for, one, shoddy work, and in some instances, non-implementation of the contracted projects.
Prince Apia reporting.
You're live on the marketplace. Let's do one of our top stories today. West African countries are to start using a single currency, the ECO, in January 2020. Currency was adopted by the authority of ECOWAS heads of state and government weekend at their 55th. West African leaders endorsed that was the currency's issuance in January 2020. Now, among the convergence criteria for adoption was to have gross reserves that can finance at least 3 months of imports, public debt to GDP of not more than 70%. There's also the issue of central banks financing budget deficit, not more than 10% of previous year's tax. My colleague George Rafi has been following through with these developments. He's joined me here to take a look at Ghana's qualification and what it holds for the country. George, welcome to the marketplace.
Hi, thank you, Rafi.
So how did we get here in the first place?
It's all about economic integration. How can the various countries in the West African region trade among themselves? And if you're talking about trading, one critical thing is about currency, and that's what this idea was mooted. You're looking at the fact that in 2005 this thing should have happened. There were challenges. In 2010 it should have happened. There was challenges, and even in 2015 it should have happened, and there were some challenges. So you're talking about certain basic conditions that countries that is the English-speaking countries in the West African zone. Don't forget that for the French countries, they're already using the CFA. So the plan was that let's first start with the English-speaking countries in the West African monetary zone for them to start issuing the currency. Now, the whole idea is that because in the past, the region was having challenges for all these countries to meet the basic criteria that you've spoken about, for the fact that your debt in relation to your GDP should not be more than 70%. The fact that also, when you talk about your budget deficit, if you look at the amount of money that you spent more than your budget, expressing that in percentage terms, it shouldn't be more than 3.3%. Countries were struggling to meet those requirements. So now, what ECOWAS is saying is that if, for instance, Ghana is able to meet these primary or basic criteria for issuing this currency, Ghana should go ahead and issue this currency.
So has Ghana met these criteria?
Well, if you look at the criteria, if you look at the fact that single inflation, we are there. If you look at the fact that budget deficit is the problem. If you look at the import cover of not more than 3%, not more than 3 months, we are there. So if you look at most of the basic convergence criteria, Ghana has met, with the exception of the budget deficit, which we hit last year around 3.9%. So that is the problem. But the finance minister, Ken Oforiatta, is insisting that Ghana is on track and they'll be able to go ahead and issue. But there's one gentleman who's heading this whole integration thing at ECOWAS, Kunedu Preku, who is the former minister here in Ghana. He's been actually giving us an explanation on the challenges and whether indeed this ECO would finally be issued come January 2020.
All right, so let's get to hear him.
challenges in terms of meeting some of the convergence criteria. We are one of the most successful economies in West Africa right now. Our rate of growth, GDP growth, has been impressive. We are hoping we will continue on that track. We have to be mindful of the budget deficits, and that's our critical issue. So, and I'm hoping that we are taking cognizance of that, and that is one of our biggest challenges. For example, some of the countries, without mentioning names, that are meeting the convergence criteria now are probably not the strongest economies, and therefore probably, just speculating, that will be difficult to just start with them alone. We need some of the bigger economies, and the three largest economies are Nigeria, Ghana second, Cote d'Ivoire third, and fourth, Senegal. So if these countries are there, then it makes it even better, so the smaller countries can join. But we have not made any distinction. We have said that the countries that meet the convergence criteria will start. As others meet the convergence criteria, they will join. And I can't predict which countries will be able to meet.
Hopefully that Ghana will be there.
Of course, I have to hope that my own country will be there.
Well, so that was Kofi Kwenedum.
He's with the West African Monetary Union, ECOWAS champion in this whole thing. But he made a critical point, because in the past we've had Benin being able to meet all the convergence criteria.
Okay.
But what they are pushing for is that, what about the bigger economies? Because it has implications for the strength of the currency. So Ghana, Nigeria has been struggling. Ghana is almost there with just one criteria to actually start rolling out the currency.
Now, one source of sticky point here is that if Ghana meets, for instance, the debt to GDP ratio, and later on reverts
again,
because
you want to go back to, because the argument is that once you improve on your economic indicators, you should be able to sustain. That is what we are all believing. But again, there have been instances where there have been slippages and all the rest. So there's a problem there. But people would ask us, so what would this mean for the Ghana cedi? Well, the plan is that if the ECO rolls out from January 2020, it will still be in circulation both with the Ghana cedi, and as the time goes on, maybe it will gradually be phased out. But the skeptics are still saying that the structures are not there to support this. So yes, the minister is committed to it, is committed to an ECOWAS protocol, but the reality on the ground is that something that we're still not ready for this.
All right, many thanks for that update. George Rafi, my colleague, briefing us on the situation as it is now, as some ECOWAS countries are bent to start issuing the ECO in January 2020. Now, for some time now, the cedi's stability has had an impact on activities of the stock market. Now, with the coming in of the ECO, is the market likely to respond positively to the introduction of the new currency? Let's touch base now with Head of Research at Databank, Alex Boahene, via Skype for some updates and explanation. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the market, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
All right. Now, what will be the implications of the use of ECO on the market, especially when we've had some challenges with stability of the cedi on the market?
Well, I think currently, if you look at the market conditions now, I don't think that investors are going to be excited about the introduction of this currency next year. But I must also say that currency stability is one of the key criteria that investors, in particular foreign investors, actually look at before bringing their money here. But many analysts, my opinion is, it's a bit, I think there is more to be done. Just by meeting the criteria doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily mean that the fundamentals of these ECOWAS economies have changed, and for that reason we are going to have a stronger currency as a whole. But I mean, if it happens that the currency becomes stable or becomes stable than the cedi, then possibly that could help attract some capital or foreign capital into Ghana. But as it stands now, I don't think that investors are going to react based on this news, because structurally, I think the ECOWAS region needs to do more. For instance, I don't think that the economies, the regional economy is strong enough to support even a bailout in the event that one of the countries that have adopted this currency or that will adopt this currency is in crisis. In terms of crisis, I don't think that the region is strong enough to absorb this or to bail out countries that find themselves in crisis.
Now, if Ghana continues to sustain one of the major criteria, that's the inflation rate on a single digit, now, wouldn't it stimulate any significant effect on the markets?
Well, I mean, stable economy is what investors actually want. So obviously, if your currency, your inflation rate is low, I think for domestic investors, we are happy because then in rare terms, we tend to get more when we have lower inflation rate. But foreign investors actually care more about the stability of the local unit, you know. So if this currency can be managed well, from what I have seen, I think the target seemed quite plausible, but that is another argument, because for me, I think that it will have significant impact on growth on the economy when you are curtailing fiscal deficit or you are curtailing government spending. Yeah, but obviously, if they're able to manage that and have a very stable currency, obviously Ghana being one of the brightest economies in the West Africa region will attract more investment into the market.
And do you foresee it being quite more stable than when we have when we're using the cedi on the currency market?
Well, that is quite uncertain for now, because currently, if you look at Ghana, our currency has had some instability. If you look at Nigeria, it's even worse at the moment. I mean, how the Naira is performing, a lot of controversy surrounding the Naira's value at the moment. So, and these are the two strongest economies in the region. So I don't think that we are going to see a much stronger currency if you look at the current economic circumstances. But in future, if you're able to control these economic indicators well, and then have a very stable currency, obviously it will have some impact on the market, because then investors will begin to see, as investors see currency as one of their main criteria when making investment decisions, especially in the bond market.
All right, many thanks for that update. Alex Boahene is Head of Research at Data Bank. Let's move on to other stories now. The Industrial and Commercial Workers Union, ICU, has petitioned the Office of the President to intervene in the current operations of produce buying company to avert imminent collapse. According to the ICU, welfare of cocoa farmers and workers in the cocoa value chain is being threatened by many forms of mismanagement and non-compliance with corporate governance rules at the PBC, which is the largest licensed cocoa buyer in the country. General Secretary of the ICU, Solomon Kote, tells Joy Business the company needs to be resourced in order to avoid collapse.
They have brought every cocoa farmer confidence into the cocoa production system. They are very unique when it comes to the buying of cocoa. Now they've run into such a major crisis to the point that the marketing clerks are not getting the funds to actually get the cocoa being bought. What will happen is that if PBC is not resourced early, those cocoa farmers who have had the interface with the marketing clerks, they may either decide to smuggle the beans outside, and their quest to continue to grow the cocoa will actually dwindle and go into other areas that we are all shying from, the galamsey. It is on record again that wherever you find a cocoa tree, there's gold beneath. And cutting down the cocoa tree and doing the galamsey is what all of us are frowned against. Well, knowing this, we are also aware that what has brought PBC where they find themselves today, a lot of reports have been made, YOCO have been notified, and a lot of investigations are going on. So whilst the right to correct the wrong is going on, it is only appropriate that PBC should be resourced to be able to get into the business and run. I will not hide to say that there are over 36 local license buying companies, but PBC stands tall amongst all of them. Annual reports suggest that PBC alone buys almost 60% of the internal cocoa that we buy. So if such a huge company have any, difficulty, it means that the entire cocoa system will also be hit. Again, cocoa alone supports this economy with over 25% of our GDP, and therefore its significance and the key role that PBC plays, PBC must be given such hearing. This is what has compelled the ICU to petition the President for help.
All right, so we want to hit the stock market again to take a look at the performance of the stock market and to see the outlook. Bertha Atubiga joins me here. Bertha, what's the update on the stock market now?
Okay, thank you very much, Emmanuel. Before I even come to the stock market, we've had some latest trends on what's been happening in Africa. And I would like to start with Vodacom, a South African network operator that intends to sell 100% of its subsidiary in Nigeria to Synergy Communications. And they also plan to exit Zambia and that of Cote d'Ivoire as well, and they'll be selling it to Synergy. And the main reason why they are doing this is to eliminate the conduct of having direct enterprise customers, like to have direct links with customers and all that. So they are actually exiting this market, and they're going to sell 100% of their stake to Synergy Communications.
Would they have any implications on Ghana's operations?
Well, no, it's actually going to be something that is going to help Synergy Communications within the Nigerian economy. And we also have Airtel Africa. It intends to list for over 500 million of its shares on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and they also intend to list about 25% of their shares on the London Stock Exchange. And the IPO, especially for the one that's going to be listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, is expected. The price is actually between 363 naira and then 454 naira per share. It's going to be determined by an underwriter. It's going to be a book building process. And the London Stock Exchange, they intend to raise about $750 million, and the funds from these two listings is expected to reduce the firm's debt, which is currently about $4 billion. And to the Ghana Stock Exchange, last week the market closed on I wouldn't say a bad note, let me put it that way, because we saw the composite index and the financial stock index both returning a week-to-day gain. The composite index recorded a week-to-day gain of 0.46%, though not quite high, but it's good. And then the financial stock index also recorded a week-to-day gain of 1.73%. However, if you're looking at the year-to-date changes, the composite and the financial stock index have gone down, and currently they closed the week with negative yields of 6.90% and 2.96% respectively. The worth of the exchange has also gone down by 2,406.89 million Ghana cedis from the beginning of the year, and currently at 58,729.64 million Ghana cedis.
And what's the outlook for this week?
Well, currently on the market, when trade started today, MTN is already down by 2 pesos. Intravenous Infusions Limited is down by 1 peso. MTN is part of the most traded equities now on the market. That's before midday. And if this should happen, it means that we're going to see the composite index decline further. If we don't see any changes in the financial equities on the market, then the financial stock index will still be at negative 2.96%.
In development of the currency before we go?
Well, we've been talking about the eco currency. And one thing, I mean, they've said a lot about it, but one thing that I would like to add to is that the economy actually has a major role to play, our fundamentals and all that. So if it is stable and the eco currency introduces stable, then we could see more trades coming into the Ghana Stock Exchange.
All right, many thanks for that update. Bertha Atubiga is our research analyst, and this is how we end the marketplace today. Many thanks for your company. Do join us again on Business Live for more development on the world of business. Have a good afternoon.